Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day as we continue to celebrate all the amazing people across the state of Mississippi who are working so hard to make this such a great place to live, work, and play. You think about, man, look where we are, and we're barreling toward Christmas. What a beautiful time of the year in Mississippi. As family and friends come together and we get a chance to reflect about the year and look forward to the next year. But as I've said so many times on the show, it's amazing that 2024 is already behind us, and we are barreling toward 2025. Man, does time fly. It really does. I want to thank our friend and the producer of this show, Cal Curley. We've had a series of shows that we've done that we did some pre-taping so that we could have some shows during the Christmas holidays. And we encountered all kinds of problems, man. We had Wi-Fi blips and goodness gracious, all kinds of stuff. And we have a way of sort of working our way through that. And we get it done. So thank you, Kyle. Appreciate all the work that you do, my friend.
You betcha, not a problem. We are problem solvers here. That's what we do. We find problems that no one else will ever find in a lifetime, and we navigate the waters as we go.
That is for sure. That is for sure. But anyway, I appreciate it, my friend. Hey, listen, I've had the opportunity to have Dave Dennis on the phone on the show many times before, and I once described him this way, that he helped to shape Mississippi literally and figuratively. He's built a really strong company, and a company by the name of Specialty Contractors. And that company's actually stood the test of time. We'll explain to you what that company is here in just a second. But his business acumen and success is very much matched by his commitment to the community. He has always worked hard in the community. I had the pleasure of working, arm in arm with him after Hurricane Katrina, actually before Hurricane Katrina, but certainly after and since. And his work has been terrific. As you probably know, to top it all off, he was a gubernatorial candidate a few years ago and got to learn a lot about this beautiful state. And I'm sure that he loved it before he started that campaign trail, but he loved it even more afterwards. But listen, it would take me the rest of the show to talk about his accomplishments. But one area that's really relevant today is that he was the former chair of the 4-statewide New Orleans Federal Reserve Bank, and he was also a national facilitator, which is essentially the same thing as saying that he was the chair of the national branch monetary system nationally and internationally. He's a current commissioner of the Airport Authority in Gulfport at the Gulfport-Biloxi International Airport. And just last week, the Gulfport Rotary Club gave him the Founders Day Award for a lifetime of dedicated commitment to enhancing and the betterment of the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Not surprised at all to see him get that award. Again, I could go on and on. We could spend the whole show just talking about his accomplishments, but we won't do that. We'll get on over to our conversation with my friend Dave Dennis. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good, Ricky. Good to see you, and Merry Christmas. Santa's coming in just a week and about 2 more days. He's going to be sliding down chimneys next Wednesday night. So I hope you're ready, and I hope you have cookies out for him, because I know you've been a good little boy. I suspect. Well,
I tell you what, man.
Kyle might know different though.
Yeah, you and I get to rub shoulders from time to time because our grandkids go to school together. And it's amazing to look at our grandkids, Dave, how quickly they're growing up. Isn't that crazy?
It's the generational change. I mean, you blink, and 30 years ago, your children were exactly where they are. Your daughter's a teacher at this particular school, and you're sitting there thinking, Jane was a room mother. You were this. You were coaching basketball and football at these schools as in grammar school, and then you turn around and blink, and holy mackerel, now it's your grandkids, and then. Maybe we'll make great grands. I hope we do anyway. That's the plan.
That's my plan, man.
That's my plan. We'll see how that works out. But that is my plan. But Ricky, things are very good on the coast. Not perfect, but they're very good. And everywhere you look, everywhere, public schools, parochial schools, business, and I'm saying this as a broad brush, probably 90% comment. Things are hitting on all cylinders, and they're working well. Businesses are doing well. They've had good holiday seasons, and it's a good place to be. Mississippi is probably the most underrated state in the country, and I'm not sure we want everybody to know that, but it probably is.
Dave, you and I have had many conversations before, but with the Trump wave sort of carrying across the United States, with big changes in the Republican Party, which I think are unifying changes. There's a lot of discussion about the economic situation, the regulatory environment, continuous need for infrastructure, the Fed policy. Man, there's a lot to talk about. But before we get into kind of covering the waterfront and all that for the rest of this show, why don't you remind people, or maybe people haven't heard us before, tell them about Specialty Contractors, this really unique business that you've built, and now your daughter and son help run it.
Well, they do run it. I'm an afterthought here now. I'm useless and I'm harmless here at work, and it's great. I've been waiting my whole life to be in that position. But we're almost a 70-year-old company. I'm a second generation that we bought a small company from actually my late wife Jane's parents, who had a little office over here. It has been built into a company that we're working currently in about 6 states as we speak right now, and we do commercial interior work. There's not a lot of fanfare. We've done about 11,000 commercial and industrial jobs, commercial interiors, walls, ceilings, data rooms, computer rooms, exterior stuccos and coatings, and a lot of the heavy commercial work and industrial work that we're almost invisible. We've not put a name on a truck since 1982, Ricky. So go figure that. For 40 years, we've not named a truck. Haven't had to. So, but we have stayed busy, and we've been fortunate. The economy's been good. Customer base has been really, really strong, and we've worked at it. But at this point, we've moved to where my son Patrick and daughter Kate are running the business, and I'm in somewhat of an emeritus role. But it's and I think that's the way a torch should pass along the way. And I thought we were good, and we were pretty decent at running the business. They're very good at it, and we're fortunate in the community, is all I'll say. And that's a 6-state community.
Well, listen, as you know, Roy Anderson, he and I grew up here in Gulfport together. Or grew up in Gulfport together on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and it's amazing what he's been able to do, selling Roy Anderson Corporation and then moving on after that to start Andecor. But he said about his dad, he said, when his dad named him to run the company, he said, "Never, ever be confused. My dad is 6 feet away." So, but, that's the way. Again, you're talking about the torch passing. Patrick and your daughter got to be thrilled that they have your wisdom and your experience and your ability to connect so close to them.
Well, I will agree with this. This will sound perhaps condescending. I don't mean for it to, but we've been very, very fortunate. Jane did a phenomenal job raising the kids. Life is good. They get it. They're both well educated, but more importantly, they know how to work. They knew how to work from the time they were young. They were pushing brooms and loading trucks and doing things that you should do, which is how they got the respect of the men. But both are attorneys, and Patrick's passed the CPA, so we've got a good combo of leadership, internal nucleus leadership, and we're just very fortunate, and I'm very blessed to have those kids running a good business, and they haven't locked me out of the office yet, so I'm somewhat pleased at that. But Ricky, it's a good community, as you well know. Hey,
listen, Dave, there's a lot of ground to cover, but probably the place we should start is President Trump, or incoming President Trump, and what he was able to accomplish. I heard someone say the other day that he ran because he wanted to prove to people that he was who he said he was, in spite of whether you agree with lawfare or not, or whether he did any of that or not. The reality was the legal system was working against him, and he was going to fight it, and he wanted redemption. And I think the thing that I missed, and I'll be honest with you about this, I think I missed this point, that he was saying to the Republican Party all along that you swung too far to the right, and that if you don't move back more center right, you'll never see another Republican president again. You've got to. You saw what was happening in the Democratic Party; they were swinging far to the progressive left. And so he remade the Republican Party. He seemed to always have a vision of that. And I was incredibly moved by Van Jones of CNN recently saying that Trump's smarter than all of us. He knew what he was doing and we didn't. And, essentially saying that we're whining, and this guy captured the White House, captured Congress, got the popular vote. When you consider what he did, overcoming the assassination attempts, overcoming lawfare, and keeping his head high and winning, and then being able to put this machine in place so rapidly, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
Well, it is, and I think.
Hey, Dave, let's do this. I didn't realize we were at the end of the segment. We're going to give you a chance to start the next segment.
Well, I'm going to touch on that and what his movement has done around the world, because it's evident that the metamorphosis has taken place in the media. The Democratic Party is going to have to do the same Republicans did, and the world's doing it. We're
going to come back and pick up there with Dave Dennis. We'll see you after this break.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We have Dave Dennis from Specialty Contractor, longtime community leader, former gubernatorial candidate, and someone I've had to work the real pleasure and honor working with in the community together with. And he loves this great state. He's been active in the Federal Reserve for a bunch of years, and has been really a player in the Republican Party also over a bunch of years. But when we went to break, we're talking about this phenomena called Donald Trump and how he was able to turn the tide and unite Republicans, unite America in some ways we never thought was possible. Pick it up from there, Dave.
All right. Well, I'm going to roll back even to 2008. You saw Obama with a movement, whether you voted for him, whether you're Republican or Democrat, there was a movement in the country when he came up for consideration. Well, the same thing was true, not in 2020, and Trump will have a stronger impact by having been out of office for 4 years. But think about what's going on. The media is moving more toward the middle, which they needed to, which you well know. You came from that industry. They got too far to one side and too far skewed in their opinionating editorials and positions. And America turned them off. The viewers and the readers turned them off, and it affected them economically. I'm talking newsprint, which obviously had a total change, and video media. But look at what's taken place in this world, not just this country, but in this world. There was a sea change in this country in the last year in America. But look what's taken place in governments around the world. France, Macron is one of his ministers, or his prime minister. He's having to work with that. Germany's prime minister, they're working, and finance ministers, they're having to realign. Just yesterday, Justin Trudeau and Canada's finance minister resigned. There's a change where people have gone from, we've got a very permissive society and a very I would say benevolent society, which all of us want. We all want a good safety net, but we got to be able to pay for it. And this country, and Mississippi, I will say Mississippi in particular, but this country, it's not Republican and it's not Democrat. It's basically one or two steps either side of the middle of the road at all times. And Mississippi is a conservative state, but not a Republican state per se. We've got Republican leadership in all branches of government. There's no question about that. But it's a conservative state. If you look at most people, they're probably libertarians as a rule. They're social moderates and fiscal conservatives. The Federal Reserve, and I had dinner at the Fed with a lot of the Fed leaders last Wednesday night. Cindy and I were in New Orleans last Wednesday night and had dinner with a lot of leaders. Having a chance to work with them, there was a very strong innate concern about where we were financially in terms of the debt. And, we've got arguably a $36 trillion debt on a 25 or so trillion. I don't know if my number's exactly accurate, but they're pretty close. GDP. So you're running about 130 or so % debt to GDP. Iceland tumbled at about 128%. Greece went down a number of years ago at about the same percentage. Now we've got a reserve currency that the U.S. has, which gives us a leg up, and it gives us the ability to hedge and do a lot of things that other countries can't. But the Trump phenomenon you're talking about, Ricky, look around this world. Look at how the bad guy leaders, by the latter part of the week of the election, they were all changing their tunes. They were all having different perspectives. And I guarantee you, they had special meetings that the Knesset met in Israel. You pick them, Putin, China, all of them had to realign their thought process just simply by the fact that Trump presents a different perspective and a different type of adversarial role, not from Israel, but from some of the bad guys. And they've got to acknowledge that. And I think it's going to be a change for the good. It's going to be a change economically worldwide for the good. It's going to be a change socially, but more importantly, I think the bad guys are having to take a deep breath and go, well, maybe we need to rethink some of the things we're doing, because the world is not necessarily with us. In a few instances, that's the case.
So, Dave, I think one of the interesting things about the Biden administration, I think it's clear now to most anyone who has any ability to think on their own and who has good eyesight, that he, for some period of time, has not really been running this country. It's been a group of people behind him. We don't for sure know exactly who's calling all the shots. I don't know if it's an Illuminati, but it's what it is. It's this. There's some management structure. Huh?
Sure, there is. Of course, there is.
There's some.
And I have no clue. I have no clue. I got no insight on that, certainly. But
what their goal is, Dave, is to protect what Vivek Ramaswamy calls the management class in government, to protect it, to protect the status quo. And, first of all, what Trump did is masterfully reveal all that to us. There is definitely a deep state. There is definitely 100%. A managerial class. There is definitely lawfare being used against political opponents. There's, we could go on and on. There's definitely enormous waste in our government. Okay, it's the result of lots of decisions over a long period of time that were never undone, and so the snowball got bigger and bigger and bigger. And now you have Elon and Vivek going in there to do their thing. What they will reveal, for example, what Elon has already revealed about the backward technology being deployed by the U.S. government, what they're going to do in working with a lot of leaders is reveal how America can be stronger. And we may not reach their ultimate goal of getting $1 trillion out. They're going to have a tremendous impact. You're not going to be able to look away. You're just not going to.
And the first thing they suggested was, okay, COVID started almost 5 years ago. We're a couple of months shy of COVID starting 5 years ago. And much of the government, not much of it, but a goodly part of it, is still working remotely. That's just not playing well in America. People that have worked hard to pay their taxes, and you typically are going to see a federal employee with a higher salary range in private sector, as a rule, maybe not always, but as a rule, you're going to look and say, it's time to go back to work, guys and girls. And I think that's what they're going to put that perspective and that attitude and that spin on the business of government, so to speak, but getting out, get to work, and let's look at things differently. What we've done for the last 20 or 30 years, not just Democratic rule, but it needs to change. And I think
Dave, what's interesting to me,
and the other thing is, Trump's a lame duck today. He's sworn in, which means he is going to be on fire, and he has nothing to lose except, I'm going to move this country forward. These are things I want to do. And there's an imperative sense of urgency, which Obama used in early 2009. And I think you're going to see him utilize a Congress that gives him the majority in the House and Senate. And I think it's going to be rock and roll time in terms of what he's trying to do with his agenda.
Well, so you and I could spend a whole show talking about media. You mentioned media. Another Van Jones observation that they used to be part of mainstream media. Now they're part of the fringe. They realize that news is coming from so many other sources.
That they're irrelevant. That if they're not careful, they're irrelevant. And I think the CNNs and the MSNBCs have figured out that, and Fox to a lesser degree, they've got to mainstream more so. They can't be totally on a diametric polarization of either side, either way. People want to hear what's the positive, not just, we are, the problems, we know the problems. What we want to know is what are some of the opportunities to solve those problems. And I think, ironically, that's what Musk is saying, and it's scaring the hell out of people. And
yeah, what I believe is that with X and what he revealed about what's underneath the kimono inside Twitter before he bought it and before he changed the name, was everything he expected to see, which is major efforts to play news and observations in the best interest of Democrats and not Republicans, and suppress Republican voices. That was happening on Facebook. That was happening in other media as well, across the board. And again, we could do a whole show on this, but the reality is that most journalism schools in America, there are rarely any conservatives in journalism school. Most of them are liberal. They come out with a liberal bias, and they eventually feed up and ascend into these organizations with an incredible liberal bias. And at the end of the day, something like CNN is not necessarily controlled by the talking heads. It's controlled by some editors and others that are in a room somewhere deciding what the narrative is going to be. And
you saw the I didn't watch the Trump interview with Joe Rogan, but you saw the movement it had in the polls. And I don't know whether it moved at a point or I'm not certain on those items, but it clearly was a marquee turning point. It was an inflection point in his whole system in terms of his whole campaign. And that, to me, was one of the I think that social media was certainly one of the reasons that he moved in another direction with young voters, Latinos and others, blacks and Latinos. I think it's exceptional, whether you like Republican politics or not. Clearly, he got it and he moved it in the right direction.
Well, the Republican Party is being completely redefined, and we'll talk more about that when we get back on the other side. But we'll continue our conversation with Dave Dennis after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. Dave, we're visiting, by the way, with longtime community leader and former gubernatorial candidate Dave Dennis, and just kind of covering the waterfront. But Dave, one other quick comment about news. What's interesting to me is that liberals like to say Fox News was the biased one, that they're not biased, and that there's redemption in Trump's reelection campaign or election campaign. It's that Fox News has actually turned out to be right mostly, and CNN and the MSNBC and the rest of them end up being incredibly wrong and biased. And I watched Scott Jennings on CNN, and for people who watch that, you see him going 5-1, 6-1 against the liberals, and when you hear his substantive responses to them, they don't have a lot of depth there beyond their bias, and it's been hard to watch, but it's also been refreshing to watch. But what they've done is reveal what is wrong with the mainstream media, and it's not good.
Well, I'm going to totally agree with you. And Scott Jennings, if you want to talk about being a lone ranger, he certainly has. He's ridden solo, and he's done well, and he's encouraged some of it. He said, I've got no inhibitions. You give me a question, and we'll do our best with it. Which means he has a principled fact base he's working from. And you're right, when you have just an opinion and a bias, there's no merit to that. There's no solid foundation to be able to spring comments or legitimate comments from. But I think that's what the press has found itself up against, that we need to be able to say we're a good country. We're a country moving forward, that, we're not Republican, we're not Democrat per se. We're an American country, and we're moving forward. What is best for America, not what is best for this group of people or this political identity or identity politics. We don't need that. In fact, it's not healthy, and it's what's gotten us in the mess we're in to a large degree currently. What I suggest is, if we take a country and we continue to make it one that everyone can grow, and you foster an environment where people can grow and be educated, you've got a chance to pull this country back to where it was. It made it so great over a lot of years, including the greatest generation. But it's a different dynamic. It's a different social media. It's a different electronic media. It's an entirely different mindset. But at the end, it's still core values that make you work. And I think that's what we got to deal with. It's just a new nuance of of how you deliver it, how you present it, and from a political point of view, it's still fundamentally, do you believe in a bigger government, or do you believe in free enterprise and self-determination, self-responsibility? And I think that's really been the dynamic of virtually every election in my lifetime. In some spin, that's what it's been.
So it's interesting if you think about, okay, look at cable, for example, cable news. Let's look at CNN for specifically. If you look at some of their best programs, they're drawing an audience less than 1 million.
Yeah.
You think about that. I mean, 500,000 to 900,000, depending on the program. Some programs much less than that. Let's look at Tucker Carlson. Just on X has 15 million followers, and his most recent video posted about the Biden administration had 25 million views already. Unbelievable.
Well, and you a typical Fox night, if I remember my numbers correct, were 3 to 3.5 million, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
That general range. So you're looking at. You're looking at a 6-to-1 spread on a typical night. Sometimes maybe it's 3-to-1, but minimally it's 3-to-1. And if you're a producer, if you're an owner, or if you're an investor in a company, you're going to look and say, all right, we're missing the mark here, folks. And is it we're missing the customer base, or is our product not what is desired by the country? And I think what's desired by the country is a truthful opportunity to hear solutions, to hear possibilities, and not just hear the nay about, I've said, we all know what the problems are. We all know what needs to be corrected. And that's true at home, and that's true with kids. You can, scold your kids, but in the end, you've got to encourage them and give them a pathway forward. And I think that's what this country is yearning for. It's looking for people that can give a positive path that says, these are our opportunities. You got to go get it on your own. You're not going to get it for free, but this is an opportunity. If you choose to go better yourself, here's a path you can take. And I think that is clearly what this country was built on. And if we continue to pursue those kind of perspectives, I think you'll continue to see a strong country, and it'll be the go-to country. My son Patrick has a very good friend, Juan Estrada, that's in Argentina. He was up here for my son's 40th birthday a couple of weeks ago. He and a bunch of guys showed up here. They just showed up and surprised my son. But we were talking. I picked him up at the airport. We spent an hour just sitting visiting. Argentina has almost a 90% inflation rate. Now, it's better now, but for the past 2-3 years, they've been over 100% on some occasions. You think about that, 10% a month. 10% a month, that if you go buy a loaf of bread for $2 today, it's $2.25 tomorrow, it's $2.50 next month. You can't predicate your life on that. And people are still using the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency. I think I mentioned to you before, 67% of all cash, I'm talking green dollars, not electronic cash, but 5s, 10s, 20s, 100s. This statistic it could vary a couple of points here and there, but 2/3 of all cash resides outside of this country, not in the U.S. So what does that tell you? The world looks at us not only as the leader, but the foundation and the domino in the middle, that if we waver or we fall, we're going to sway the whole world. And I think that's what I was saying earlier in the program. The election last month, it sent a shockwave around the world, not just in this country, but look totally around the world. And you're seeing countries, strong allied countries, France, Germany, Canada, many others that are smaller. Their whole dynamic is changing. Their whole perspective is changing. And it's because they're saying, you know what? We've got to look at a little bit more of a fiscal responsibility that we have not considered before. And I think that's where you're going to see the world go. And I think you're going to see it go in a good way. And like any good train that's going down the tracks, you can't have any gaps in it. So you got to pull everybody as you're going. And if we can do that, we're going to hit a home run in this country again.
I think you're right. I'm watching that. with the sort of the same perspective you have. Everything is on the table now. and it's going to be an organized effort like we had never seen before. One other quick comment. You mentioned Joe Rogan when we were off the air. Joe Rogan, that particular interview had 53 million views just on YouTube. But when you add X and the shorts that came off of that and all that, we're talking about hundreds of millions of views. Same thing for the Theo Von interview. I mean, literally redefining how this works. The influences of Trump, like I said, is going to be literally across the board. And it has implications in so many different ways. I mean, the future of the Republican Party has now, I mean, used to MAGA in a lot of circles, even Republican circles, was a bad name. And today it's everything is being remade MAGA. And, I think back at Governor Reeves. When it wasn't cool, he was all in. I mean, he was all, he seemed to get it, didn't he?
You're right. He never deviated at all. And what I really think is people are looking at this country, and they probably were waiting for someone to step up and at least be the leader to move us. And, at 80 years old, is that too old to be president? Apparently not. Would it traditionally have been too old? Certainly. But he is going to be, to me, and again, it doesn't matter if I'm Republican or Democrat, just looking at it pragmatically, he will be more effective as a president having been away for 4 years. He's been able to put people in place that he can truly trust. When he got elected in 2016, he just willy-nilly went out and picked people and said, all right, here, 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 and here. He fully expected to win. In the last 4 years, he sat out for 4 years, in spite of the legal concerns where he was just pursued relentlessly. And I will say this, you talk to most people that don't even like him, and they have to agree. When you've had no president ever indicted, and then you got one guy alone that's got 92 or whatever, however many indictments he got, maybe they're legitimate, maybe they're not, who knows, it doesn't matter. But there seems to be some skew that was not necessary, in my opinion, and that is a bias on my part. But if it were a Democrat, I'd say the same thing. To me, Hunter Biden did not need to go to jail. Trump didn't need to go to jail. Those things don't need to happen in this country. Now, do they need to be spanked if they're bad guys? Absolutely. But what I think Trump has had the ability to do by coming in for a second term after having a 4-year absence, to be able to put a leadership team together, to be able to put the right people in places for cabinet members and other things, I think he will be tremendously effective, and they're going to hit the ground running wide open.
I think he's right. Listen, when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the economic situation and when they begin to make changes in America's energy policy. What does that mean for Mississippi? We'll see when we get back on the other side with Dave Dennis. We'll see you after this. Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We're visiting with longtime Mississippi community leader and former gubernatorial candidate here in Mississippi, my friend Dave Dennis. We spent a lot of time kind of talking about Trump and how that's going to change the nature of things. I want to kind of bring it back to Mississippi for just a second. One major change is going to happen immediately, and I've heard the need for this from so many different people across the state of Mississippi, but we're going to have an energy policy that's second to none, and that's long overdue, isn't it, Dave?
I think so, Ricky. I mean, whether you like fracking or not, if you have that ability, then you certainly have the ability to provide a much stronger supply of energy. And if you're energy independent, then the bad guys that have held you hostage with oil embargoes, with saying, oh, we're going to cut production by 2 million barrels, and then suddenly the price runs up, or if some wacko goes and attacks a ship in the Red Sea, for instance, the price of oil spikes. Doesn't come down so quickly, but it spikes. And some of these things, if you've got energy independence, it takes a lot of those concerns off the table. It gives you a stable, more predictable, and sustainable economy if you have a predictable energy price or sustainable energy price. It can go up based on supply and demand and market conditions, and certainly those are always going to happen. But if you are held hostage by your energy supply and by your energy policy nationally, shame on you, is my opinion.
Hey, listen, one of the things that my guests and I have talked about over the last couple of years is that, you can increase the amount of capacity in terms of oil that we create. But we need more refinery capacity. We may be short as many as 2, maybe even 3 refineries. And of course, the Biden administration was doing nothing other than making it very difficult for current refineries, and certainly not going to be any new refineries. But, we can turn the switch today on moving to electric vehicles, and it's still going to take us 30 years to get there. We're petroleum, dependent. We may see some changes in that arena as well as it relates to.
I think you're going to see a pullback on EVs. Put yourself down in Dade County or Broward County, Florida, and a Cat 5's coming ashore, and you're trying to get out of town, and you get to Orlando, and there's 8,000 people in line for 2 charging stations. How in the hell are you going? You just help me with that one. I admire the prospects of having clean energy, and I think that's clearly the path we're going to need to take. We're just a generation or 2 ahead of it right now. The path may be correct, but the logistics of putting it in place, grid systems for power grids, power generation, not only are we not doing refineries, we're not doing power generations. We're not doing a lot of things that, energy powers your country. You want to know why Amazon's coming to Mississippi and investing? They said $10 billion. Guess again, it's probably a whole heck of a lot more than that up just north of Jackson and Richland. It's because energy is available. Entergy, the power company Entergy, has been able to provide adequate power supplies, and in economic development, that's one of the keys. It's not just price of land or water, sewer, and all that. It's what is a kilowatt price? And number one, is it available? It's like insurance that we had after Katrina, availability and affordability. And if you got those 2 components, why wouldn't they locate in a state that people want to work in? And so energy has more to do with just national security, more to do than just national security. It's economic development, it's jobs, it's prosperity in a community, and we have the natural resources without abusing Mother Nature to do it. So I think we need to move forward in all of those arenas.
Listen, man, we were already doing well from an economic development point of view. This Governor Reeves, is going to go down in history. His legacy will be an economic development governor. But the reality is, you start streamlining regulation, and you start creating a situation where entrepreneurship can thrive. And in a state like Mississippi that's already been attracting multi-billion-dollar projects one after the other, what does that mean for Mississippi's future? It's got to be bright.
Well, I tell you what it is. It's jobs. It's fostering growth in your education system. But to me, the most important part is your kids and your grandkids will have an opportunity to have a job, a legitimate career and job, maybe not in your hometown, but close by, close enough that you're not having to drive to Topeka, Kansas to go visit your grandkids. And I think that's what all of us are looking at. We want growth in our area, and we want it to be in a position that we can do that. And I think energy is one of the components of it. But really and truly fostering an environment. Why do you think people are stampeding out of California? It's regulations, and it's almost like the state of California doesn't want them there. So guess what? We're leaving, and Texas is grabbing them. Florida's grabbing them. Well, guess who else is grabbing them? The state of Mississippi is grabbing them. And
my son, as you know, Jordan's a real estate lawyer. He does a lot of closings that are cash closings from people who sold their houses for a bundle of money and came here and made a good investment in Mississippi. We're going to see more of that as time goes on. But listen, we're out of time for the day. I look forward to having you back. We'll have to get back together from time to time and just talk about how this thing is progressing, this Trump machine.
Give me, you got 15 or 20 seconds. Let me make a comment about you, Ricky. You have done a phenomenal job as a publisher, as an editor, and certainly as a community leader. And now you're doing it on SuperTalk. And thank you for what you've done in this community. And I'm proud of you, and I'm happy for you and Ann, and thank you for what you've done for all of us.
I appreciate it, man. It was all made possible because I worked with people like you. That is for sure. Listen, have a great day, everyone, and we will see you tomorrow.
Merry Christmas.